All right, looks like we'll go ahead and get started. Wanted to just thank you guys for allowing me to sit in with you this morning. And I love the first question. What has COVID done to boost the beard grooming market? I think it's had a substantial effect.
Thank you, Anthony. Great question. Great question.
So we're going to go ahead and I think first things first, why don't Shane, you introduce yourself, and Rob, you introduce yourself, and then I'll go ahead and introduce myself, and then we'll get into it.
Perfect. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Rob Allen. I am VP of Operations for EMEA for ThreatLocker. I've been with the company for about 6 months. Now, the fullest of full disclosures, Shane, who's on the call with us as well, his company Expd8 is where I came from. I worked for Expd8 for 18 years, so I have a background as an MSP as well, and I'm sure we'll dive into that in a little bit during the call. But that's who I am. So, Shane?
I'm Shane. I'm the CEO of an MSP that we traditionally target the professional services market. We have 22 staff on the IT side of the business, and yeah, happy to be here and tell you my journey with the guys in ThreatLocker over the last while. So.
Yeah. Again, my name's Adam Friedman. I'm the ThreatLocker sales manager. I work with Rob. I handle stateside sales, United States, that is. So I wanted to just join this call and kind of talk about some of the things that are affecting MSPs pretty much worldwide. And, you know, one of the biggest things we're hearing, especially with everything going on in the news, is, you know, how can MSPs leverage zero trust to one, fight ransomware and protect the businesses that they've worked so hard to grow? And what do those steps look like to implement that framework? So we're going to kind of, you know, take a high level approach to it. We're going to be using the question and answer section, not the chat section, just to kind of give it some consistency as far as we want to try and get all these questions answered. So chat will not be monitored, whereas question and answer will. This way we can kind of have some organization from that standpoint. So, you know, from the standpoint of ransomware, maybe you guys could share some of your, you know, experience with ransomware and what it's done to some of your clients and your customers from that standpoint.
Do you want me to go first, Shane?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I sort of, when I talk to people, I tell a couple of stories about our experiences. And again, when I say our experiences, it's both mine and Shane's experiences. Our background are very much technical. So we have been the soldiers who are getting the phone call at 8 o'clock on the Monday morning to say we can't access our files. I'll give you a specific example in a moment, which is a real eye opener for me. But we've probably experienced, I'd say probably somewhere between maybe 10 and 15 ransomware events down through the years. Have seen every possible way of these things getting into organizations and happening, everything from people clicking on links they shouldn't, to ad networks that were poisoned, to stuff deliberately dropped, to compromised credentials. For a long time, if somebody had asked me, and for many years, if somebody asked me how do I protect myself against ransomware, my answer for all of that time would have been sensible steps: have antivirus, have firewall, have a good firewall, make sure your machine's up to date, and on top of that, basically backup. As long as you've got enough backups, you're probably going to be okay, and you're not going to go out of business. You're going to be able to get back up and running again. Might take you a few days, but realistically, you can probably get back up and running. My thinking on that changed, and there was I can literally pinpoint the moment that my thinking on that changed. And Shane, you'll know what I'm talking about here, but one of Expd8's biggest customers got hit by a ransomware attack. Now, it was of no fault of Expd8's, because it actually came in via a VPN to another site, another part of the operation in Canada. But as exactly I described earlier, I got a phone call at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning saying, look, we can't get into our SAP system. Can you check it out? I logged in. I could see immediately what was going on. I could see immediately there was dodgy accounts logged in. Managed to get it shut down within about half an hour, for example. There was a bit less than that, but a couple of servers had been wiped out. Not the end of the world. We were able to get them back up and running from a backup. What changed my thinking, though, and what really frightened me with that particular event was the first line of the ransom note. And the first line of the ransom note was, we have uploaded 1.3 terabytes of your data to the internet. And if you don't pay us on this date at this time, we're going to start releasing that data. And that single event changed my thinking on what you need to do to protect yourself against ransomware, because having backups isn't enough anymore. Just being able to get back up and running isn't enough anymore. The knowledge or the fear, even, it doesn't have to be knowledge, even just the fear that your information or your client's information is out there is terrifying. GDPR implications. I mean, the first question that this customer asked me was, well, number one, do you think they have it? And the short answer was, we didn't really know. And the other question was, well, what are the GDPR implications? Because that was what he was most concerned about. And I mean, realistically, you're looking at a couple of % of global revenue if that information leaks out. So that was a real eye opener for me. And that changed my thinking, I suppose, as an MSP. And it was at the end of my being an MSP. But if somebody had asked me before that, what's the most important thing you do for your customers? My answer would have been, we keep you up and running. We keep you operational. We look after your servers. We make sure everything is patched. We make sure it's all fine. But after that, my thinking changed to the most important thing an MSP can do for their customer is keep their data secure. Make sure it doesn't fall victim to ransomware. I mean, 80% of ransomware attacks now include the threat to leak data exfiltration. And it's a completely different ballgame. It's not just a case of getting people back up and running again. It's, as I said, that knowledge, that information might be out there. So Shane, any other thoughts or?
Yeah, so I think in the current landscape, you can do as much as you can to protect. It's getting more sophisticated, like the attack Rob was talking about. They have a US entity, a Canadian entity, UK entity, and in Ireland as well. They actually did it, I think it was Memorial Day.
It was a holiday weekend.
It was a holiday. It was a holiday in the US, and they had ignited it on a bank holiday or a holiday in the States, thinking that they would be able to encrypt over the next 24 hours. They'll be able to get as much as they can. They didn't realize that we were monitoring from our own time zone. So they actually did it at night on the Sunday, and then basically on Sunday night meant that we were kicking in going, this doesn't look right, some of the Irish users. So it was very sophisticated. It was done very well. And it was actually quite scary to see that there was that much level of thought. It wasn't just spray and pray and hope some Egypt installs ransomware on the machine or downloads it. So things are getting a bit more sophisticated now. But then it traveled, and then it highlighted some inefficiencies because it was a co-managed situation. But it's getting very scary. We've also seen other people, not just ransomware, install software on machines to credential harvest. And then from there, get into the Office 365 of a user who is the accounts user. Or the CEO, man in the middle job. And we've seen people lose a significant amount of money, north of $500,000 in some cases. And we've also heard and been first responders for people who didn't have adequate protection. So I think with the current threats, especially when you look at the Kaseya's and all of the hacks are in Ireland, our government health system was hacked as well, which has caused knock-on effects and will do for the next 8 months. Through inadequate security. I think the concept of zero trust was never accepted. Like when we'd all be on a webinar and or we'd on a video call and nobody'd have their video on. Now it's accepted. people have their video on. You know, it's these things. Zero trust was not accepted. Like if you did something going, oh, zero trust, Jesus, we have to make a huge list just to allow, and it was just hassle. Now there's no choice. Now it's zero choice.
And that's a good point. That's a real good point, Shane, because, you know, as in the sales side of this, I have a dual role. So one is to make sure people understand what a true default deny, control and absolute security solution does and how it compares to some of the tools they're using today. You know, a lot of those tools are based on detection, based on bad past behaviors. And, you know, the Kaseya event, I think, you know, one, they utilized a holiday weekend, hoping to slip in, and they were successful for the most part. I'll give them credit for that. But luckily, somebody was paying attention. Kaseya shut the VSA cloud off. We're still not 100% convinced of what the implications are. And I'm sure there's some forensics going on that will eventually let that information out. But the main question our MSPs have is, how much is this going to take of my time and resources to manage? Do I have to have a guy sitting at a terminal handling permissions all day, creating policies? And getting that message across too is the most important, because that's application whitelisting in its antiquity. When it first came, and that's the essence of application whitelisting. What we've done is kind of taken that and made it a little more user friendly. We create those policies automatically, working with our MSPs, going through the onboarding process. Now, I want to kind of get into what ThreatLocker is, what we aren't, and then talk about, Expedia's experience with ThreatLocker, and what kind of brought you to us, and what it's been like thus far, and how you foresee this relationship going forward. So a couple things from that standpoint. What is ThreatLocker? What is default deny? What is zero trust? These are all buzzwords we're hearing now on a daily basis. And I think the biggest thing is, people want to know, okay, what is this going to do for me? What protections am I putting in place? And I think at a high level, ThreatLocker allows you to run what you need to run your business. And that goes for you, that goes for your clients. And to answer that question of how much resources I'm going to have, you're going to find MSPs are you will be your own worst enemy when it comes to zero trust. And I say that because the tools you use are varied. You're checking new things out. You're trying new things. You're trying to make sure you can give the best experience to your clients. However, with that known, you have this beautiful test environment to work with, to go through all your policies, make sure everything's hardened, make sure the space is as secure as it could be, and you really draw that baseline in the sand that says anything from this day forward, and going through the process of implementing a zero trust infrastructure, you're going to be able to vet, you're going to be able to put eyes on, you're going to be able to make sure it's good software. But there's also some other aspects of that we can go into. And Rob, I might ask you to share a little of your screen, and kind of, at a high level, we'll do some, views of ThreatLocker, what the portal looks like. But then I want to get into Shane and his experience with us for sure.
Yeah, just to elaborate very briefly on one thing you mentioned there. I mean, the Kaseya event obviously is fresh in everybody's mind because it's quite recent. And just to sort of reiterate, the reason that we blocked that, the reason we were successful in stopping that, was not because we're better than other tools, or because we're cleverer than other companies, or because our agent has better AI or anything like that. It's purely down to the approach we take, which is deny by default. And Adam mentioned that, but deny by default is fundamentally what we do, which it's not because we figured out the bad thing was happening and we're able to shut it down. It's because we don't trust anything other than the things that have been specifically allowed and learned. And it's a fundamental shift in terms of the approach you take. It's not about detection. It's not about past behaviors, which is what most antivirus tool depends on. It's not about figuring out if something is good or bad. We don't care if something is good or bad. If it's not on the whitelist, it's not allowed to run. So because of that, as I said, it's a fundamental shift in approach. That's why, or that is how you can protect yourselves against these kind of things affecting you. I mean, the Kaseya event, the one thing that my experience of speaking to MSPs since then, the one thing it's highlighted to MSPs is that there is a non-zero chance of your RMM being weaponized or compromised and weaponized. It might be only a very small chance, but it is a non-zero chance, as the Kaseya event demonstrated. So the question is then, if we're working on the assumption that this can happen, and it clearly can happen, how do we stop it wiping out our clients? Okay. Right. And again, just to the comparison between sort of the way we do things and other tools, we don't have to get it right every time. And this is the whole point. Other tools, things like antivirus, EDR, MDR, they have to get it right 100% of the time, or your customers can get wiped out. And as that Kaseya event shows, they only need to get it wrong 0.001% of the time, and your customers are wiped out. We don't have that sort of calculation because, as I said, we trust, or we don't trust anything. We deny everything by default. Right. And you only run what is allowed to run. Sorry, somebody's just asked a question, Adam.
Basically how we would have stopped the attack on the Kaseya server and not the endpoints. I think that Kaseya event, the details still are coming out, but essentially ThreatLocker lives in a couple different spaces. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Adam, but just that specific question, we wouldn't have stopped it on the Kaseya server. Okay, we would have stopped the execution of the ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's what the default deny does. It doesn't allow things run that haven't been whitelisted effectively. So we would have stopped, and we did stop. I can show you a screenshot of the ransomware being blocked from execution. So it's not that we would have stopped it on the server particularly. We would have stopped the execution of the payload. Oh, sorry, we did stop the execution of the payload. I hope that answers your question, Mike.
Yeah. If you need us to dig a little deeper, Mike, just let us know. So Shane, from your standpoint, as an MSP, I feel like we here at ThreatLocker are evangelizing this message, and the tools you use every day can be used against you. What has been that kind of shift in your thinking in the space you're in to kind of saying, okay, this is happening. This is something I need to address. What has that kind of thought evolution been?
So we would have been quite naive before. This is maybe a year ago. Antivirus is enough. You turn on disk encryption in case you get robbed. You limit permissions. You do what you can. But things have escalated quite substantially. So quite in quickly. The likes of quite quickly as well. Yeah. The Kaseya attack. That's why we're a full ConnectWise house. But that's not to say that we are a target with a bullseye on our back, whether that be through the vendor or through an individual or a group of hackers, because we're one to many. And as a vendor, that's very scary. Our insurance quotes, I've only just got the renewals in last week, have doubled. Doubled. And also, yeah, and they doubled even though we stated we've had zero trust technology. We have firewalls in place. We have ID, whatever, all these things, the intrusion prevention stuff in our servers. We have everything that everyone wants to see in the box ticking exercise, and it still wasn't enough, and it's doubled. So we were also informed that premiums for MSPs will be denied going forward if they're not up to a certain standard. So the world is changing 100%, and you can see it. Like Kaseya, who's to say ConnectWise is next? They're a big vendor, they're one to many, and it's just scary. So in my mind, with the ThreatLocker solution, I've actually been talking to Danny for quite some time, probably about 2 years before I actually made the decision, believe it or not, and then Rob joined them as well. So I'm very independent from this, and I'm not here just to sing ThreatLocker. So I'll give you an example. It's quite inconvenient sometimes when you have a staff member or you have an employee going, I can't run this, I just need to run this, I need to run this, I need it now, and there's panic. And I was in a situation myself. I had it installed on my own personal machine, and I use Zwift for online cycling. And I was never more frustrated in my life than when ThreatLocker was denying the Zwift update. And you're kind of going, will you come on? Now, I only had to allow that once, and then that frustration was gone. So that was a hesitation that stopped us onboarding our clients, and was, this is going to take over the desk. This is going to do everything like that. And it's funny, now that I look at it, we don't actually have any tickets from our clients, because in theory, after about 2 weeks, you understand what's going on at a client site, and you've indexed what's going on. So anything abnormal is outside. So you may need to update an accounts package, or you may need to do something else. We had someone trying to use SkyGo. I'm not sure that is relevant to some of the attendees, but it's a streaming service. It's an application that you install on your machine, and it streams digital TV. And like, that's not allowed by default. So he was kind of getting frustrated. We were kind of going, yeah, but what happens if that was something malicious? Do you want to just allow? So I think one of the hesitations for us was, we're going to be bombarded here from tickets. This is just not going to work for our clients. They want to install, they want to have full control. And it couldn't be further from what actually is reality. And our ticket volume is way down, and having the cyber heroes, I know you want to get into it, so I'll probably jumping the gun in some ways, but it's been interesting. But like, I've a real life situation. I'm not ThreatLocker coming to MSPs going, you need this. It is a huge amount of worry. Cost comes into it, manpower. Then you're talking about 24-hour coverage. If somebody's running something at 1 o'clock in the morning, how do I deal with that? Or, do I need to have 24-hour cover? There's a lot of hesitations coming in as a business owner. But I'm going to be very clear, when the Kaseya hack happened, if that had happened to ConnectWise, I would not be in a panic mode, because I know the ransomware would not be able to be executed on the endpoints, because it is zero trust. And I know zero trust has been a buzzword now, but it is basically, it's not able to run unless you explicitly say, yes, we'll allow that to run, like the Swift. You know?
Yeah, and it's been an interesting view, as you can tell by the colorful aspects of my beard. I've been in this industry for a number of years, and I've taken a lot of roles, from internal IT, from MSP, from selling various remote monitor management tools, and now coming to the security space and preaching, the fact that these tools can be weaponized against you. We've been saying this ongoing, and as soon as it happened, I have never seen our phone, it's like all of a sudden now everybody's listening. Now there's like, oh, this really can happen. This can happen to me. And I think what's happening is people are starting to realize that, the tools I'm using can be used against me. And what am I doing to protect myself? And they start kind of thinking differently, and it's refreshing, but it's also scary. And I hear it in our MSP's voices. So we go through this process with them of onboarding, and maybe you could talk a little bit, what that onboarding looks like, trying to implement, and not just, I understand what the main focus here is ThreatLocker, but zero trust is a very important part of protecting your endpoints, your servers. What has that been like from your view and experience with us, and any other tools that you're using that would kind of coincide with that?
Can I actually explain something about that, Shane? And I've been working closely, obviously with Exped8 and with the techs in Exped8 in terms of getting this implemented. But just to Shane's point about sort of ticket volumes being reduced, there's a couple of things. When we deployed, we've been effectively, Exped8 pushed out all of their seats, or all of their agents basically. And we've been going through an ongoing process with them to get those environments secured. So we might go through a few clients a week. I want to give you one example though, and Shane, you're going to know what I'm talking about. There's about 88 servers, remote desktop servers, terminal servers basically, that people are logging into. And previously, people could basically do whatever they wanted in that environment. They could install anything. And I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff that they were trying to install. But that was one of the first environments that we secured in conjunction with working with your techs. And when we did that, and this was quite early in my being with ThreatLocker, I was really interested to see how many tickets were going to come through. But what I did was I set myself to get notifications when two things happen. So I get an email notification when anything gets blocked in that environment. So those 88 servers, anything at all gets blocked, I get an email. I also get an email when anything gets requested. So if one of the users clicks on the button to say, yes, I want to try and run this file, I also get an email. Now, when I set that up originally, I thought that would be pretty much the same. So for every block, there would be a request, or that was my assumption. But what it turns out is, for every 10 things that gets blocked, only one thing is getting requested. And that's confirming something that I knew anyway, which is that users are just sitting there and sort of blindly clicking yes, 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 yes. But as soon as you put any impediment in their way, as soon as you force them to make a decision and ask for permission to run something, 90% of the time, they're not going to bother. Because very often they'll realize that they didn't actually need to run the thing they were trying to run, or that they shouldn't have been trying to run the thing they were trying to run. And it was a real eye-opener. I mean, as I said, you wouldn't believe some of the things that people were trying to run in this environment. I mean, they're trying to install Zoom on a terminal server.
Right.
Like, why the hell are you trying to install Zoom on a terminal server?
And it's funny, Rob, because Anthony King just posted, it's in the chat. Anthony, next time, if you could just post it to the question and answer section, but you have a good point. The bulk of attacks are down to a lack of basic security awareness. And that simple act of having to request to use software makes you as an individual realize, do I really want my manager to know I'm trying to download this coupon clipper, or, I'm trying to load Zoom onto a server? It forces people to kind of become part of that true security triangle and say, okay, does this make the most sense?
Adam, if I can just ask, because there's a key phrase in there, get the most bang for their buck in the fastest time. And we're talking about users. So a bit of background of our clients, Anthony, is our clients are mainly solicitors or lawyers. So they are very technophobic. They haven't a clue how to use computers. They are click happy, like Rob alluded to. It's click, click, click. And we're talking about employees being the biggest security risk. I don't disagree with you at all. So what we've done is we've stripped away any ability for them to do anything unless it's approved by ourselves. So from the bang to book, and I see Auto Elevate was mentioned there as well. we've tested out Central One, we've tested out all the other EDR products. We've had a look at Huntress, we've had a look at all these, and they're not like for like, just to be very clear. But what the fundamental difference is that they do not have any ability to run. We don't run it in it doesn't run in a sandbox environment. It doesn't go, we'll monitor you until you do something malicious. It goes, boom, no, you're not allowed to do anything. So if you don't have permission, or if you don't have if you're not allowed to run, you're not allowed to run. That's end of. So
if you can't run, you can't execute. Yeah, that's a great
so the
point.
users actually don't have the issues. So that is the fundamental difference for us. And because I genuinely thought this would be a nightmare for us trying to deal with our clients and have it like this. But like Rob said, most people are just click happy, and they'll try and click. They're trying to install Hulu on the browser or whatever they're trying to do. They don't really understand what they're trying to do. And until they have to request and actually verbalize and put it in there, what am I actually trying to install? I'm trying to install accounts package. Well, that's logical. I'm trying to not do any work and install a streaming browser, or I'm trying to download Tor. We've seen some mad stuff. And even to our own point, our clients are one thing, our actual internal staff was a different gravy altogether. Because those guys, for some reason, they had local admin permissions. I don't know how they got them, but they were able to change permissions. They had some very interesting things installed on the machine. So when we went through our own internal audit, that highlighted some huge security risks that are now, it's just not possible. You know what I mean? It's not possible for them to do anything because it's not allowed, So I hope that answers the question to the bang for buck. That has been the most significant bang for buck. I would get rid of my antivirus tomorrow if it wasn't needed from a box ticking exercise. That's scanning after the fact. We're preventing from it actually even been possible. So I think from the bang for buck, people will look at costs, and cost is a big thing, don't get me wrong, but it's imperative that you need to protect yourself and your own clients. So even if you're not going to do this for your clients, roll it internally, and you'll be very surprised as to what actually comes up and what is running on the machine. So.
Well, and I think too, there's been a huge shift in the MSP space from, with the unfortunate events of COVID and everybody having to work from home, and now this target rich environment presented itself to these bad guys to see. Now they're out of that infrastructure of the office that you have control of. Now you have bring your own devices. You've got people working from home. You've got children using the same computer that they're running, working their business with, and it's such a target rich environment that I think the mindset of allowing only to run what needs to run is becoming so much more prevalent, so much more necessary to block these type of attacks. And one of the things I think we do very well is that even if, something comes in that has that payload on it, that is, somebody says, one of your level 1 techs just let it in. It's late at night. He got a request. Okay, fine. I'm on the ThreatLocker port. I'm letting it in. It won't be able to execute. It'll be in there. It'll be able to try and do its thing, but the ring fencing will protect it from that execution stage, which then starts that encryption phase and locking everything out. But that is a key component that even if you do have somebody who opens that door, you're still protected. And that's, I think, what you were alluding to, Shane, with some of the tools you're using is, even if something gets in with your RMM, something tries to mimic it, that's where we take that default deny approach. And we're basing our security off behaviors of the software. And that's how we go through this process of onboarding with you. And I kind of want to, talk about that, like, the audit reviews we went through with you and what that process is like. I always find it fascinating to see what's installed on our client systems from, fragments of software that somebody did, and it still has access to certain, components of the network. And it's eye-opening, and it kind of highlights this mentality we need to get to of like, we're putting up a steel door. You can't come in unless I know who you are. You don't let somebody come into your house and go into your kid's room. That just doesn't happen unless okay, this is my mother or my grandparent. You got to know who you're dealing with before you let them in, and that's a key component of it. So maybe talking about the onboarding process of going through the audit review experience and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I think Rob alluded to earlier, we rolled this out in silent mode to all clients in read-only mode, and that's really beneficial because nothing happens. You're just buying yourself time, and you're 50% of the way there to being secured. And then if you had a security breach, you can switch that on straight away and deal with whatever happens. So the onboarding has been interesting. So I just want to, it's very technical solution what you guys have. It's very technical. It's so some of it's over my head when you start talking about MD5 hashes and you're talking about different things. Most MSPs don't really have, unless they have a few staff members that will really understand the actual engine that is driving this. For me as a business owner, I don't necessarily really want to know, but I do want to know is when things go wrong, who do I go to? And when requests come in that I don't understand, who can I ask? And the cyber hero assistance has been very interesting. So we roll this out to clients, and our techs actually kind of just started going, oh, I don't really, this is very technical. It's a lot of work for us. And having the cyber heroes there has significantly helped us with our onboarding. So being honest with you, it's hands off for us as such. We're a managed solution with the cyber hero. So what we do is roll it out to the machine, leave it for 2 weeks. It indexes what's running in the environments. We've seen Dropbox, we've seen Google Drive, and these are pure Microsoft clients. We've seen games been run, actual, you know, the like Call of Duty and all that stuff, all installed on work machines. We've seen some malicious tools installed on machines as well. And then
tried to be installed.
Tried to be installed,
yeah.
And then some actual unidentified programs that when we get into it going, that is just garbage. So you talk about when you start getting all these HP updates and all of this stuff, some of it is just absolute garbage. And you're just looking at it going, what's actually installed on these machines? And then you can run the script to uninstall all that noise. Right. But from the onboarding is we push it out through RMM or whatever scripting that you guys want to offer or have access to. But the idea behind it is we just deployed it and we didn't give clients a choice. Right. There's no choice in this because we assume the risk until we de-risk it. So right. As the vendor, we go out of business. The minute that happens, we're liable. And I'm actually involved in something at the moment, but it is we're liable until we de-risk it ourselves. So we didn't give them a choice. I don't know whether you want me to go into the actual how we dealt with dealing with the clients, but we gave them no choice.
I might ask you to do that in a second, Shane. If you don't mind, again, I just want to speak to that onboarding process. And this is stuff that you wouldn't necessarily have been sort of intimately involved with yourself because we were dealing with your tech guys, we were dealing with Paul. But 1 week, the weekend before the bank holiday, so we've been going through the process, securing the environments, as I mentioned. We did the cloud service a few months ago, and as I said, that was instructive. What was equally instructive was just before the bank holiday weekend in Ireland at the beginning of June, we secured about 350 seats, about 7 or 8 of your biggest clients, Shane. Now, I had thought, or I'd assumed again, that there might have been a bit of an influx of tickets coming through, an influx of requests coming through. But in the following 7 days, or in the following, it was more than 7 days, in the following 10 days, actually, 3 requests came through. And I don't know if you're aware of this, Shane, but 3 requests came through from customers that we had secured. One of them was a guy trying to run Roblox, okay, on his business computer. So obviously that was denied. The other one was really interesting. And again, I haven't spoken to you about this, Shane, so I don't know if you're even aware of this, but a request came through from your second biggest customer. You know who I'm talking about. They're a large firm of accountants, okay, from the reception computer in that organization, trying to run an IP scanner. Okay, so obviously that request came through to you, to Paul as well. Both of us looked at it and went, why the hell is the receptionist trying to run an IP scanner, a network scanner? That doesn't make sense. So you guys got in touch with her and said, look, what are you doing? Why are you trying to install an IP scanner in your machine? Turns out it wasn't the receptionist at all. It was the phone system dude. So random phone system dude, nothing to do with you guys as an MSP and just tangentially involved with the customer insofar as he looked after their phone system, decided to sit down on the reception machine and install an IP scanner. So sent a request through, obviously you guys rang up, found out what was going on, said, no, you're not installing a network scanner. But in the absence of ThreatLocker, that would have just been able to happen. So he could have installed that software and that would have sat there as a potential vulnerability on that customer's network forever, okay? And nobody would have known, nobody would have been the wiser. But the other example I'll give, and again, I don't know if you know about this, Shane, but I thought it was hilarious. So it's the same company, partner in the firm. Late one evening, a request came through, perfectly typed out, okay, but it was to run VMware Horizon VPN client, Okay, and it was, as I said, it was perfectly typed out. The request said, please, I need to install this to connect to my computer and work. Okay, alarm bells went off justifiably because they don't use VMware and they don't use VPN. So they use terminal server, remote desktop gateway setup. So obviously it wasn't approved, wasn't allowed to run. But when you guys got in touch with them, it turns out that this guy, partner in the firm, had given his laptop, okay, along with his password, with your ConnectWise agents installed. So you were still technically managing this machine, but he had given this machine to his brother. Okay, along with the password, along with credentials, along with any data that was on it. It wasn't wiped down, it wasn't cleaned, it wasn't disconnected from Azure AD, it wasn't, you know, unauthenticated with Office 365. But he just handed the machine to his brother because he was finished with it. I don't need this computer anymore. Here you go, bro. And it was his brother who had sent that request into you guys. But again, because ThreatLocker stepped in and blocked him from installing that thing and forced him to request access to it, all of this came to light. But otherwise, that wouldn't have been apparent. I mean, nobody would have known that this guy just decided to give his work computer with all his data on it to his brother because he was finished with it. Yeah. I just thought that was very instructive in terms of the kind of things that will come up. And as I said, they were the only requests that came through from locking down 350 machines. They were the only I won't even call them issues because they're the system working as the system should work.
Yeah. I see a couple of questions coming in too, and it looks like they're directed towards you, Shane. And I'm curious as well, because, you know, I'm on a different side of this, obviously, working with a security vendor. That discussion you have with your end users, once you know you've deployed ThreatLocker, once you've seen gone through the audit reviews with, you understand what's installed. How did you get them to opt in, so to speak, and kind of go along with what you're trying to put in place?
Yeah, very good. So I'll be very honest. I'll tell you the good, bad, and everything about ThreatLocker, because a vendor is one thing, but you need to know the whole experience. Like I said, it's very scary taking on something like this because it's very technical and you're putting yourself out there as that. But from this communication standpoint with the customers, we've been traditionally, we go to a customer, we sell it to them, we come back, we deploy it, we do it, all that stuff, we invoice and all that. It's very, very cumbersome. It's very, very uneasy about doing this, but it was very successful. The most successful thing we've done is it did an email explaining. It was once the Irish government's health system was hacked, said, right, we're not taking any chances here. If people leave, they leave. That is what it is. So we want to send out a mail to all the decision makers. So I sent out, I think it was 300 odd emails, direct emails, just to decision makers within the business, saying we are deploying this to your machine in read-only mode. The biggest difference that we did was we didn't just say we're giving you 6 weeks free of trial. We assumed the cost for the 6 weeks. In that 6 weeks, we went through each client and we hardened them. But in the email, it said, you're going to get this free of charge for 6 weeks. It is going to protect you doing this. It is in light of all recent events to protect you as a business. So now we're being forthright. And now we've provided the best solution to our customers. So now it comes back to the de-risking. I was on a webinar listening to someone, and they were talking about risk management with a vendor or with an MSP. We assume the risk until we de-risk it. So that email automatically de-risked it. I wasn't necessarily looking for the opt-in. I was looking for them to opt out. Yeah. That was the key differential. I was very scared, to be honest with you. So it wasn't, the fact is would you like this? This is on your machines. It's going to be there for 6 weeks. I'll have an account manager come back and have a chat with you about the costs and all that. If you do not want it, that is no problem. Please put it in writing and then we'll remove it from your machines. They get ransomware. You're here, Mr. Customer. There's that sheet of paper. Here's this email that's tracked through our PSA. So I was very hesitant in sending it out. I thought I'd get loads of backlash. How dare you?
I basically bullied you into it, Shane.
Yeah.
Right.
But as a vendor, like, or as an MSP to these guys, you know, you do, and you're going, oh, they might leave. I got one email and said, please don't do that. And I said, that's fine. And then after I hopped on the call with them, they said, no, we're happy enough to proceed. I got one saying, I don't appreciate you doing this. And I said, well, that's fine. Look, maybe we're not the right vendor for you because I can't assume this if you're not willing to do it. So we had the cyber heroes, all the package deal 24/7 sold it to them. We didn't really have to sell it to them. It's, look, do you want this? Because most of your clients will have some sort of regulation, and you're going to have the penny pinchers who will go, don't want it. And that's fine if they reply back saying, we do not want it. So now you're covered in the event of a ransomware or any other subsequent issue that happens. You come back to the same going, well, we offered you an advanced security system that has zero trust and blah blah blah. You only have basic antivirus. So
Right.
that's how we dealt with it. I think the open rate was about 70% on the email that I got reports back from. But like I said, just one person coming back, giving out after I hopped on the call and explained to them, and literally just said, look, I'm just de-risking everything that happens. You get hacked, and I say it to them exactly as it is. So it's been interesting. Yeah.
And just to elaborate on that slightly, and again, based on my own experience, Shane, with you, my mindset was exactly what you described, which is that we have a new tool. As an MSP, we've got a new tool. We now need to go and sell this to all of our customers. So there's a huge amount of work involved in that. There's a huge amount of legwork, phone calls, emails, follow-ups, getting things signed, everything that you have to do as part of the process to sell something. Absolutely, it is hassle. But that was my mindset, okay, 100%. And it's only since I started working with ThreatLocker that I see, and it's based on the experience of working with a lot of MSPs in the States, and they have their ideas of bundles and stacks and all that kind of stuff. But I've very much come around to the idea now. And what we did with you, the other thing about I don't want to call it the old approach, but the other thing about the traditional approach where you have to go and sell it to each person individually,
it wasn't doable because we had so many clients. It wasn't doable.
Well, this is true, but even if you did a really good job, if your sales people did a great job with that, you might have a 30 or 40% take up. And I know that from my own experience, even with things like online backup, stuff that people really need. If you work really hard and put a lot of time and effort in, you might get 30 or 40% take up. With the approach that you took with ThreatLocker, you've got 100% take up. And all you've had to do is to send one email and answer a couple of phone calls.
Right.
Wait until the price increases.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying though. Like, you've taken all the hard work out of that engagement process. You've sent
There's too many moving cogs there that could have gone well. But it does trust in that, because surprisingly people like what you're saying.
A lot of people said the conversation.
I actually got I think it was 20 or 30 people, give or take. I think maybe 25, let's call it, who said, I don't need a trial, just put it on my machines. That took me by surprise.
Yeah.
You know, not just, I went, Jesus, I should do this more often, you know, because it was just, and then again, it's on your machines. You want it off, let me know you want it off, as opposed to there. So I would talk to the guys. Rob will give you a copy of that email that I sent, because he has a copy of it. So anyone can have a go, and my details I'm happy to discuss with anyone. But it's your own approach. You know your clients, but again, you just have to take a leap of faith, because you assume the risk until you de-risk it, and that's just prevalent, like, you know what I mean, everywhere, you know.
And I'm seeing a similar experience with our MSPs all over the world going about this. I mean, I find the ones who try and pre-sell it and try and have those conversations individually, usually I won't hear from again until something happens. And that's the facts, you know, whereas talking about a proactive approach to saying, okay, we're your MSP. It's our job to make sure you're as protected as possible in this environment that we live in today. And these are some of the tools I'm putting in place to achieve that goal. And if you're not willing to, you know, come with me on this journey to make sure your intellectual business is protected, you're able to come into work and your employees are able to come into work, I can't protect you. You've basically taken any effect I had on securing your environment away. So who's to blame? Because who's the first person your clients are going to call if they have, you know, they come in and they got the blue system of death, or they're crypto locked and there's some mess.
Oh, I thought you did all our security. I thought you looked after the streets. I thought you did that. That's not you. You're the IT guys.
Assumption of security. Yeah,
that's the problem. You know.
Yeah.
There's a question there from Jack, which I think is interesting. It's just about the bundles and the stack as such. ThreatLocker is a main piece of our, let's say, stack. We don't really use stack, but we have ESET as an antivirus. I've looked at SentinelOne. We've looked at other EDRs as well, and we've used Auto Elevate. So we've actually, to the previous point, we've actually scrapped Auto Elevate, because I can get into that on a different point. But
I want to tell a story about that.
As ThreatLocker progresses, the elevation is key as well, because that's just two of them. Auto Elevate is a great product. It is not like for like, just to be very clear on that. I've seen some people running ThreatLocker and Auto Elevate, but as the elevation management comes in to ThreatLocker more and more, you won't need that. I had one of our engineers who kept on testing He just keep on approving. He trying to submit approvals for like uTorrent and torrent downloaders, just to see who's there, because it's a mobile app and you just approve. And if you don't look into it significantly, you can approve something malicious. So there is.
Can I share a quick story on that? And I do tell this to people sometimes when we're asked for comparisons with this. You'll remember this, Shane. I was on site. So again, part of my function for Expd8 was as an engineer. I do installations from time to time. But I was on site in a very small little town in a remote part of Ireland called Moat, and I was installing a firewall. Okay, this was not long after we'd deployed Auto Elevate on our internal machines. I actually didn't know we deployed it, and so I got down, was getting ready to install the firewall. It was a sonic wall, so I needed to change my IP address to 192.168.168. something. So went to change my IP address, got blocked by Auto Elevate. So I was like, oh. So I sent a request. Sorry, I couldn't send a request through because I had no internet connection, because I'd already plugged out the old firewall in preparation for installing the new one. So I couldn't get an internet connection. Rang you. I think you were actually on your way to a medical checkup, pregnancy checkup, not you personally, but you're on your way to that. But anyway, I rang you. What the hell am I going to do? How am I going to get a connection? You said, well, you're going to have to send a request through so I can approve it. So eventually I had to hotspot through my phone to get an internet connection, to send the request off, to change my IP address. You got the request through, approved it, changed my IP address. So I had to go through the same process 3 times more for every time I needed to change the IP address on my machine. Eventually, it took me about 4 hours. I couldn't get the internet connection working, which was a whole different kettle of fish. But eventually, it basically took me about 3 or 4 hours to do this or go through this process. What I did in the end was, because I was so frustrated and I was so annoyed at it stepping in and blocking me doing from everything I wanted to do, I went into add remove programs and I went to uninstall it. But you approved my uninstallation of it because it just came up as another request from Rob on your phone. And because it was so convenient to just click on yes, you approved my request to uninstall Auto Elevate on my machine. And I just thought that was really instructive as to why having something too convenient is not necessarily a good thing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I just thought that was really interesting. But yeah, that was my Auto Elevate story.
Yeah, and I think, Jack's question is one I hear a lot as well. Where do you guys fit into a comprehensive security stack? And do I just need ThreatLocker? And our canned answer is, I'll tell you full disclosure, internally, all we use is Windows Defender. Do I recommend that for an MSP? Not necessarily. We definitely take, we're a security company. We take a different stance when I can't run anything on my computer that I don't need for business, period. And to me, in the mindset of where we're at and what you're protecting and what's at risk, that's kind of the way it should be. If you want to play games, use your console, use your personal computer, work is work, business, pleasure is pleasure. And that's how it should be. And I think what a lot of companies are afraid to do is, well, I don't want to, anger my employees that they can't, listen to Spotify or, load a Facebook app on there. However, the landscape is changing. The risks are getting greater. And my biggest fear is that now that there's been some success with an attack on an RMM tool, this is just, Pandora's box. We're going to see more and more of this. They're going to be coming after all of our tools and trying to turn them against us. So the conversation is, I think you did the best way possible in that, saying, hey, this is what I'm doing to combat this. And you'll get people that say, well, why didn't you think of this sooner? I'm like, well, technology is an ever evolving space. And as threats arise, you have block impedance to that to make sure you're protected. So it's a good place to be, and it's a good conversation to have with your clients to give them some security awareness.
I think one of the biggest things to do is roll it out internally and see what happens, see what it's like, see what the experience is like, see what technical people can deal with it. We rolled it out to all our clients at read only, and whether they liked it or not, it was just there to index. You'd be surprised what you see. So back to the security stack as such, ThreatLocker is the main front, because you can have Sentinel 1 scanning, but that means Sentinel 1 is reactive. It's not proactive. It's scanning, sandboxing, all this type of stuff. It's already gotten through one layer of defense, stopping it from start. So, ESET is scanning after, all of these things are all after the fact. There's zero trust. Now, the biggest thing to overcome that is my clients are going to have absolute nightmare when they start trying to install something. You'd be surprised how many things get installed in a day, in a week, in a month. It's very little. So your clients' environments aren't as diverse as you think they are. They're not installing stuff all the time. And if they are, then you can attach that. We have a development team internally, that separate business unit, but they run development tools all the time, and we deal with that in a separate manner, that they're able to run things that are ring fenced. So I know we're talking about, point blank denying. You can ring fence an application. That means, Word should not talk to the internet. It should not run a PowerShell script. So macros cannot run in Word. They can't talk to the outside. So this it gets technical there. But I think from the point of view is ThreatLocker, from what I've seen, I had Auto Elevate. We were using it before. Auto Elevate scans or is permission management. So it's anything that uses elevation, it'll do it. That is hackable. Anything else is there that is manipulable. You can go through it and you can fake it. So from ThreatLocker, from what I've seen, there's no way you're going around it. And even physically on site in front of a machine, you can't run some sort of thing off a USB and still try and go there. It's just not allowed because your USBs aren't allowed. Whereas Central One will, and I'm using Central One just as an example because somebody's mentioned it there. But look, I think it's a no-brainer. I had a lot of hesitations, and like I said, it took me 2 years to get on board. I knew Danny as well before this, but when we've done it, I know it's a cliche, but I sleep a lot better at night knowing that there isn't going to be the Kaseya, those people who woke up for those Kaseya attacks, or the ransomware on their machines going, oh thank God, so cost went out of the equation. It's not something that we assume the cost for a certain period, and then we give the client the option, do you want it, yes or no? Then so it's not something that we're mixing and matching in a stack of such. In my opinion, I would run ThreatLocker with a traditional antivirus. That being said, I want to try and boost sales, so more than likely we'll put an EDR type product on top of it eventually, maybe something like Huntress or something like that. But it's not really necessary. So to the guys saying that they run ThreatLocker with Defender, that is 100% possible because we have a few machines internally running that. So is ThreatLocker the main product of choice at the moment? Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So.
And Jack, you bring up a great point. It's much easier selling to existing clients, but gaining those new clients there's a challenge there. And I think one thing we do as an organization, our support is beyond. We have 24/7, 365 days a year, a sub 60-second answer rate for requests for support. But another thing we do to with our MSPs is we do a lot of branded brochures. We basically can focus on whatever vertical you're in. If you just want to focus on small to medium business, if you're in the dental industry, the legal industry, the healthcare industry, whatever your focus is, we have a lot of tools that help you get this message. And again, the key of any marketing when bringing new clients in, talking to existing clients, is getting that conversation to be about the core values of what you're trying to do. What does your MSP stand for? What are you trying to do from a security standpoint? And my perception, and I maybe you could concur, Shane, is a lot of these conversations are going to start with security. Yes, I want you to support me. I want you to handle my infrastructure and make sure I can run my business, but how are you protecting me?
Yeah.
And that's going to differentiate a lot of MSPs versus others that, what does your security stack look like? I think that's an important part now of this conversation that we're having with future clients.
So I know we're consciously just coming up with time, but there's just some very interesting from a practical MSP standpoint. So Craig asked, how does it integrate with your ORMM? I'll be very honest with you, Craig, it's not to the level that some other vendors do. But it's sufficient enough. We push out all of the agents silently, automatically. We have scripts in using Automate. So whatever ORMM of choice, all the scripts are cross.
Can I elaborate on that slightly, Shane? There's a reason that we don't integrate too deeply with your ORMM, which is if your ORMM gets compromised, we don't want people to be able to turn ThreatLocker off directly for an ORMM. So there is a security reason as to why we don't go that deep. Obviously, tickets get created, you can deploy using it, that's fine. We just don't want your ORMM to be able to disable protection in ThreatLocker. So it is.
And I can also validate it is extremely hard to uninstall without getting approved.
That's our
Hence
Swift.
And I was going out of it, and then I had to pick up the phone and get this down. I lost the head, But if that was something malicious I was running, or that it was a malicious intent, they're not getting it off the machine. So so from the ORMM, like Rob said, there's no automatic. We do have tickets coming in automatically. They are cataloged against customers, so it has the email parsing, I think it's called, where the tickets come in automatically, approvals. We have Cyber Hero, so everything goes to Cyber Hero. So 95% of the stuff goes to Cyber Heroes. You know, Print Driver, Office 365, Office, all these things are done automatically by the guys in ThreatLocker. But where we intervene is remote access tools, or anything that is out of the norm. So, you know, Go to Assist, or if someone's using Log Me In, where we use ConnectWise Control, that type of thing.
Right.
So from ORMM, it's very easy to deploy silently, and again, it doesn't even show up on a user's machine, so they wouldn't even know.
Can I just elaborate slightly on the Cyber Hero that our Cyber Hero service you're mentioning? So we've got Cyber Hero support, which is our ordinary support for all of our customers. It's 24/7, 365. It's for, you know, questions as much as technical issues. If you use it, you'll see it in the corner of the portal. Somebody's going to be on within a minute. And if they're not, somebody's getting their ass kicked. It is literally within a minute. It's not like logging a ticket with Microsoft and somebody comes back to you 3 days later. So that's included for all partners. What Shane is referring to, though, is the Cyber Hero Management Service. And the Cyber Hero Management Service is basically an add-on service that we offer. And it's where we effectively approve requests, or we evaluate and approve or deny requests based on a partner's specific instructions. So Shane's company has given us instructions as to what we should approve and what we shouldn't approve for their clients. So it's specific to their customer base. So we know what we can approve, we know what we can't approve. So as Shane mentioned, something like a remote access tool. If somebody tries to run a remote access tool, we're not going to do that, because we've been given instructions by Shane to say, no, you can't do that. But built-in applications and applications updates to things that are already running, all of that is going to be permitted based on Shane's instructions. But that's something that's taken a lot of the workload. So they don't have to deal with the day-to-day requests coming through. So, you know, 95% of the requests that come through, and there's not that many, but 95% of the requests coming through from Expd8's customers are dealt with by our Cyber Heroes as part of that Cyber Hero Management Service. And as Shane said, it's only the 5% that we're not sure about, or they don't fit into the specific instructions, that then get passed back onto the MSP to query.
Well, it looks like we're past our hour here. So, you know, I want to thank both of you, you know, for sharing this information. Hopefully there was some good content. We're going to send a recording to all the attendees of this meeting we had. And, you know, we'll put a link to set up a trial. Try ThreatLocker for yourself. You know, see what it's like to live with us on a daily basis. And you know, the question is, when you're talking about new clients and bringing new clients on, we do a lot of end user facing clients where you take the role of the MSP and we take the technical role, just explaining what you're putting in place. So there's a lot of options we have that we work closely with our MSP partners to make sure that the message is clear. So you're not depending only on your internal salespeople to verbalize this. Let us do the heavy lifting from that standpoint, explain the what, the why, the how, and you can explain, you know, the cost and what the management looks like from the MSP side. But gentlemen, I thank you very much. I think this was a good conversation. And I look forward to having more with you. I think we're going to be talking about this a lot more in the future.
Thanks, man and Shane.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.